Hello everyone and welcome. We're out and about today to celebrate the 201st birthday of one of my engineering heroes, Richard Peacock. Unfortunately, we couldn't celebrate his 200th birthday last year due to the national lockdown, but better late than never. I'm stood here outside the magnificent Brookfield Unitarian Church in Gorton, Manchester. It was built by Richard Peacock between 1869 and 1871. It cost £12,000. In today's money, that's a little shy of £1 million. It replaced an earlier chapel built in 1703, which stood a little way over there. There is a persistent myth in Gorton that Richard Peacock and his business partner Charles Beyer had a bet. And that bet was to see who could build the biggest and grandest church in Gorton. The prize being a set of 8 church bells which would be cast in Gorton Foundry. Suffice to say, those 8 bells are up there in the bell tower at Brookfield Church. Richard Peacock, who is commemorated in this bronze tablet behind me, was born on the 9th of April 1820 in Swaledale in the Yorkshire Dales. He was the son of Ralph Peacock, a mining engineer who worked in the lead mines in that part of the Yorkshire Dales. One of Richard's earliest memories was being taken by his father at the tender age of 5 to see the opening of the Stockton and Darlington Railway in September 1825. Supposedly his father said to him, "Hey lad, that's the future there." Unfortunately for Ralph and his family, the lead mining industry in the Yorkshire Dales was in freefall, so he removed his family to Leeds, the centre of the textile trade in the West Riding. Richard was educated at the Leeds Grammar School before being apprenticed in 1834 to Fenton, Murray and Jackson of the Round Foundry in Leeds. Fenton, Murray and Jackson were the oldest locomotive building firms in the business, having built the Blenkinsop-and-Murray patent rack locomotives for the Middleton Railway in 1812. He left his apprenticeship aged 18 in 1838, and his first job was as the locomotive superintendent of the Leeds and Selby Railway. He didn't remain with the Leeds and Selby Railway very long, however, as in 1840 the line was leased to George Hudson, that's Charlton and Crook. Instead, Peacock travelled south to Swindon to work for the Great Western Railway as personal assistant to Sir Daniel Gooch. He didn't remain in Swindon very long either, as in 1841 he came back up north to work for the Sheffield, Ashton, Underline and Manchester Railway, the precursor to the Great Central Railway, as their number 1 locomotive engineer. As their locomotive superintendent, he was responsible for repairing and maintaining the locomotives at the very cramped works at Newton near Hyde. Because of the cramped size of these works in 1844, Peacock moved them to a new site in Gorton and laid out what became known as Gorton Tank. Richard Peacock's business partner was Charles Beyer, alias Karl Friedrich Beyer. Beyer was born in Dresden in Saxony in 1813, the son of a weaver, but thanks to a wealthy benefactor, was able to study at Dresden Technical School. With little English and even less money, Beyer came to Manchester in 1834 to find work, and his talents as a designer and draftsman saw him becoming chief engineer at Sharp Roberts and Company of Manchester 9 years later in 1843. Richard Roberts, founder of Sharp Roberts and Company, had pioneered the use of proper engineering drawings, the use of machine tools and standard designs with interchangeable components. Beyer would follow in this tradition, placing great reliance upon machine tools and standard locomotive designs, which could be tweaked according to customers' requirements. If there were ever 2 opposites, it would be Beyer and Peacock. Beyer was a tall, ascetic, cadaverous man who never married. He was staunchly Anglican and a member of the Conservative Party. I'm not entirely sure whether he actually enjoyed life, as he considered himself to be the greatest of sinners. In contrast was Peacock, who was a nonconformist, a liberal, and someone who loved life. Having made his fortune, Beyer moved to the 25-bedroom Llantysilio Hall in Denbighshire in North Wales, and this was in marked contrast to Peacock, who lived in the midst of his adopted community at the far more modest Gorton Hall. Beyer died in 1876, and in his will he left £104,000 to Owens College, the precursor of the University of Manchester. In today's money, that's about £7 million, which was used to erect the Beyer Building. Beyer also built and endowed 3 Anglican churches in Gorton, and the church at Llantysilio, where he is buried. In 1854, Richard Peacock, together with his business partner Charles Beyer and a silent partner Henry Robertson, established Beyer, Peacock and Company. They purchased 12 acres as a greenfield site, which had formerly been strawberry fields, to establish the Gorton foundry, which was literally over the railway tracks from Gorton Tank. Richard Peacock was the works manager and responsible for the commercial side of the business. Charles Beyer was chief engineer and head designer. The assistant works manager was Heinrich alias Henry Dubbs, another German immigrant like Charles Beyer, and he went on to found his own locomotive building firm, Dubbs and Company, in Glasgow. Beyer's personal assistant and the chief draftsman was Hermann Jaeger, another German. And following the death of Beyer in 1876, Hermann Langer became assistant works manager to Peacock and the chief engineer and chief designer. Beyer, Peacock and Company completed their first railway locomotive for the Great Western Railway in July 1855. And between then and 1966, when all production ceased here at the Gorton foundry, the firm built over 8,000 railway locomotives. The majority of the output of Beyer Peacock was for export and was built for a bewildering variety of gauges. Beyer Peacock locomotives were built for customers in Ireland, Scandinavia, the Netherlands, Spain, India, Egypt, and South America. The only market Beyer Peacock did not break into was the United States, where they sent only a single locomotive. Beyer Peacock became internationally known for the quality of its product, especially for their boiler making and fire-welded wrought iron wheels. The firm diversified in the 1890s, building steam tram locomotives, steam rail motors, steam lorries, and even early electric locomotives. Perhaps the most famous product of the Gorton foundry were the Beyer Garrett articulated locomotives. The first one was built in 1909, and the last being built in 1956 for use worldwide. In the 1950s, the firm built the famous Hymek diesel hydraulic locomotives for the western region of British Railways, and the last locomotive built by the firm, a Class 25 diesel, is today preserved at Peak Rail. The works shunter, built in 1879, is also happily preserved at the Foxfield Railway. Richard Peacock was married and sadly widowed twice. His first wife was Hannah Crowther, whom he married in Leeds, but she died in 1854. He married again in 1855 here in Gorton to Frances Littlewood. Unfortunately for Richard, she died tragically in 1870, and he planted this tree which stood outside Gorton Hall in her memory. Richard Peacock had 5 children. His eldest son, Colonel Ralph Peacock, commanding officer of the Gorton Artillery Volunteers, was his son and heir and succeeded his father to manage Beyer Peacock and Co. His 2 other sons were Joseph and Frederick William. He had 2 daughters, Jane and Eugenie. When Jane, the eldest, was dangerously ill and recovered from typhoid fever soon after the death of her mother, as an act of thanksgiving, Richard paid for a unique set of frescoes painting inside Brookfield Church. Indeed, each of the bells hung in the tower at Brookfield Church are named after the Peacock family. Richard Peacock was a big bear of a man, someone who lived life to the full, the life and soul of every party, and he had a very blunt and very northern sense of humour. He was a lifelong Unitarian, and his Unitarian faith inspired his daily living. As a Unitarian, he believed passionately in equality and social justice, and that heaven wasn't somewhere where you went when you died, There was somewhere to be built here on earth. Not only did he build Brookfield Church, but he established a non-denominational day school and Sunday school. He gave liberally to the Gorton public baths. He was founder and president of Gorton and Openshaw Mechanics Institute, and together with a minister here at Brookfield, the Reverend George Henry Wells, established a penny savings bank so that a working man could open a bank account with only 1 penny. He was a justice of the peace, and it is said of him that whenever he was on the bench and a foundryman from Beyer Peacock was brought up before the magistrates for drunkenness, he would let them off and pay the fine himself, Richard, of course, having had personal experience of working in a foundry. He was from 1885 the Liberal MP for Gorton. Peacock supported reform, if not abolition, of the House of Lords. He advocated the disestablishment and disendowment of the Church of England. He supported Home Rule for Ireland and greater devolution to the English regions. He also used his position as a Member of Parliament to support the passage of the Act of Parliament for the Manchester Ship Canal. He died aged only 68 after a brief illness in March 1889, and is buried here with the rest of his family in this magnificent tomb at Brookfield Church in the heart of the community which he came to support and love. So those have been the basics on Beyer, Peacock and Company of Gorton, and its co-founder Richard Peacock. I'm sure you will all join with me in wishing Richard a very happy, if somewhat belated, 200th birthday. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, please like, share and subscribe. And if you would like early access, please consider supporting this channel on Patreon for as little as a takeout cup of coffee once per month. Finally, I would also like to thank Andy Mason and Brookfield Church for helping to make this video possible. And see you all next time on Rail Story.